This is Jason from Sweaty Hero Comics Bargains, and today we're looking at Deathmate, and we're looking at Image and Valiant comic books. Deathmate was a crossover in the 90s, in case you haven't seen any of our videos I've done, where the Valiant heroes and the Image superheroes that were at the time both combined into one merged universe, kind of like the Marvel DC crossover, where they amalgamate it into one universe. The problem, though, is that where Marvel and DC, when they amalgamated into one universe, you already had 50 years of history of the Marvel DC characters, so you kind of knew what Marvel and DC looked like, and it was a new, fresh thing for Ballgam. With Image and Valiant, especially the Image characters who had only appeared only a year or two before, and with a lot of late books, I think for a lot of readers like me, it was very confusing. Like, okay, Exo Manowar. If I'm not familiar that he's a Valiant hero and that this guy is from Cyberforce, and then that guy's from Wildcats. Well, actually, I mean these two could be look from the same thing, right? And that's Turok the Dinosaur Hunter. But how do I know that? And so I think that for a lot of readers it was confusing. The books, they were prestige books, and they weren't labeled with numbering. They were just labeled like black, red, and with the prologue and epilogue. And those ones were a lot of them were really late, especially the red one. But you do have artists like Mark Silvestri and Jim Capallo. I mean Greg Capallo, Jim Lee, and Wheels Portacio are all part of this book. And then in the epilogue that we have here, you have Bob Layton as writer, Mark Silvestri as penciler, and for chapter 2, you have Joe Quesada as penciler because he was working for Valiant at the time. Barry Windsor Smith also did the prologue as well. They are fun to read now, as 30 years later. As I'm making this video in 2026, but really crazy. So let's look at the Valiant line and let's look at some of the Image comic books that are out there. So we all for these are all for $1 at Vintage and Vinyl Amherstburg, and it was a record store, but also sells 10 long boxes of dollar comic books that you could get for $1 each. And or you could go to Rogues Gallery in Windsor, and they also have a lot of dollar books that you can find, which are like a lot of overstock and a lot of older titles. If you buy a long box, he'll give you a great deal. You can a long box would have like 400, so just keep in mind $1 a piece. If you're buying 400, you know, you're gonna pay for 400, right? And then Paper Heroes with Windsor's another great comic store that I recommend. Sometimes they have dollar books, not always, but they always have great deals there too. But Paper Heroes is my favorite comic book store. Obviously, I'm from Windsor, Ontario, and there's also dollar bin books and bargain books at conventions and at all kinds of stores. Anyways, let's get to the video. We have Solar Man of the Atom, which was actually created by Gold Key, but Valiant took and did a lot of cool stuff with. I have enjoyed every issue of Solar. I think that Solar would make a great movie directed by Nolan. Christopher Nolan doing, like, imagine Interstellar meets Oppenheimer, and that's where you get what you kind of get with Solar Man and Atom. And there's another issue of Solar during the Chaos Effect crossover that they had. These are two original heroes to Valiant, Shadow Man, and another one is Time Walker. But they had a lot of characters, and like I said, Exo Manowar was one of their more famous characters. So let's look at Image throughout the years. Well, we have some Spawn universe. So Spawn has become popular enough that first we have Spawn #1. Well, not really. Well, obviously this is a reprint because it says Image first. It is usually $1 in the dollar bin, so it's on sale for $1. Anyways, but Todd McFarlane's Spawn #1. I remember buying this, and it is cool. It is a cool book, but McFarlane only did the art for the first like 20 issues or so. Obviously, most people know who Spawn is, so I won't get really into it. But he has now created like a kind of universe of characters that kind of go with those books, and they include this title, which is Misery, which it looks like a limited series of 3 to 4 issues. He kind of uses this cardstock paper. This book cover price was $2.99, so it's a little bit shorter than 32 pages, but there's still 20 pages of story. But it's a cardstock cover. It's $2.99 US, which is still a $4 book Canadian. Cygor, which is a kind of one of the villains of Spawn, and then many other titles like there's a Team of Spawn, and then there's a King Spawn book, and there's a Medieval Spawn, and Gunslinger Spawn as well. Then we have Whilce Portacio's Wetworks. Whilce Portacio, due to family and other personal problems, his was the most late of the Image founding 7 books, but this is his book, Wetworks, which is like a Black Ops team, and you can see this right there, and they fight monsters, obviously. And this is a source book, which will hopefully help me understand more about this. And this is an issue of X-Force. I'm sorry, Brigade. I'm sorry, Rob. Rob, you did a great job with a lot of the... Rob Laffeld, you ever watch this video? I do enjoy all these extreme heroes. Brigade was a lot of fun. I really remember really enjoying Brigade just as much as I enjoyed Youngblood, actually. There was a lot of interesting characters on this team. This was art by Merritt Michaels, as Rob wisely decided that he couldn't draw everything. So he started to get other people to help him do some of his other titles. Obviously, Supreme came later. And I really enjoy Supreme as not so much a knockoff of Superman, but more like kind of like an anti-hero. Well, we even see an anti-hero version of Superman, more of an extreme version of Superman. He's just a variation, right? But he's an interesting one. Dart, I believe, was created by Eric. Yep, Eric Larson was the creator, and Dart was created first in the pages of Savage Dragon. So here is an issue of Dart. Here is the Wildcats, written and drawn by not Jim Lee. That is Eric Larson doing art with one of Eric Larson's superheroes. This is issue 14 of Wildcats, and so they kind of switch places. And Jim Lee did this, and Jim Lee did this issue. Eric Larson did. Here's another. Now we get into some, and then we get into Gen 13, which is also another popular character team. They're very similar to Generation X, but I would say they're kind of the MTV version of those characters. But Gen 13 was popular. It was popular enough to actually have an animated movie at one point that never got released, unfortunately. Then we have Kin, which is a Top Cow. Top Cow would be Mark Silvestri's part of Image Comics. And then most recently you have Ghost Machine, which is Jeff Johns, Brian Hitch, Jason Fabok, and other creators who have created their own imprint within the Image line. And Jeff Johns created this character, Redcoat, with Brian Hitch, which is... obviously, like the title says, a red coat. So he's kind of like a Highlander, you could say, like Highlander, an immortal soldier through time. And these books are kind of really interesting. They're really fresh, and it also feels just really original. So a lot of the Ghost Machine stuff just feels really original. Like Rook Exodus by Jason Fabok. Shout out again that he's a local Windsor, Ontario comic artist. Rook Exodus is a sci-fi tale, but it feels... you can't say it's like Star Wars or Dune. It's its own thing. It's Rook Exodus, and it's awesome. Go check out these Sweaty Hero Image comics. Thanks.